organization whose mission is to serve youth, children, and families through compassionate healing, education, and empowerment. And our vision is that youth who have suffered trauma can become future leaders. Today, we are absolutely delighted to host Let's Talk about race in the LGBTQ plus community. We have an outstanding panel here for us to learn from. And it's an honor to have Jane Sachs and also to know that Kim Hunt are part of our diversity advisory board. And also I'm delighted that my brother, Roderick Hawkins, is here to facilitate that conversation. My friend, someone who I respect deeply and dearly. And I can't wait to learn as much as I can today to help me become a better leader. And with that, I want to toss it over to my brother, Roderick.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone at UCAN and the LGBTQ ERG and everyone who's a part of UCAN for putting this event together. It is my pleasure to be your moderator for this conversation. And I'm excited to just welcome the wonderful panel you're about to get to know. Many of you, hopefully, of our participants know them already. For those of you who don't know our panelists, get ready. It's going to be one of those days, a good day. A very good day, a great conversation. We all gathered in Community Friday, and it was lit, as the young folks say. But that said, I don't want to hold it any further. For me, my role here today is to really just keep the conversation flowing, making sure we're on time, and to just a couple of ground rules for our guests, you, our wonderful attendees. Please use the Q&A box, the Q&A function to submit your questions. We're going to take questions at a certain point. So while we're having the conversation, if something comes to mind, just drop it in the Q&A box, and we have our team folks who are going to be looking at the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to some of those. Those of you who are watching us live on Facebook, same for you too. Feel free to submit your question in the comment box and on Facebook, and those questions will be gathered too. We're going to get to as much as we can, but again, without any further ado, let's get it going. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists today. So I'm going to just start with Yanitza Carmona y Correa, who's the executive director at Club Tahi Ciudad Hidalgo and bilingual outpatient therapist at Pillars Community Health. Yanitza was born to Mexican immigrants. This experience has permeated every aspect of their life and has led them to work towards the decolonization of the spaces in which they exist. Their passions lie in the intersections of youth work, the immigrant experience, and queer and trans advocacy. They graduated from the University of Illinois at Chicago with a double major in Latin American and Latino studies and applied psychology. Upon graduation, they worked as a legal case manager with Youth in Care, previously known as Wards of the State, who were pregnant and parenting. While there, Yanitza gained insight into how various systems in the United States replicate and exacerbate harm. With this in mind, Yanitza continued their education and obtained their master's degree in social work from UIC. And it was during that time that they were also presented with the opportunity to revive their grandfather's hometown association, Club Tahi Ciudad Hidalgo. And also should also mention that Yanitza is also a former member of the UCAN team. And there's so much more to say, and you'll learn about Yanitza as we go forward. We've got some dynamic bios. So I encourage you all to go to the websites, Facebook pages, that we'll talk about later to hear more about everyone, because I won't be able to get to everyone's bio in depth. Next up is Reverend Fraser, or as affectionately known as Pastor J. He loves working at the intersection of race, sexuality, and religion. He leads the Lighthouse Church of Chicago, United Church of Christ, which has worship sites on both the north and south sides of Chicago. The heart of the church's mission is clearly expressed in its motto: passionate about Jesus, serious about justice. Lighthouse is predominantly Black, LGBTQ inclusive church that welcomes all people. And Jamie also founded with his colleagues there the Lighthouse Foundation, which is doing a lot of their community engagement and activism work and calling out issues in our community and internally and externally. So you'll learn about the Lighthouse Foundation as well too. So I will say Jamie's passion and hard work were recognized by Chicago Theological Seminary when he received the inaugural 2017 Bayard Rustin Award for outstanding service and commitment to the work of social justice. So we are, well, and again, I mentioned Lighthouse already. So that's Jamie Fraser. Welcome. Next, who just made me sing before we went live. That's the conversation. The one and only LaSaya Wade is an open Afro Puerto Rican indigenous trans woman She's the member, so founder of TNC Project of Tennessee, but she's of course the founder and executive director here of the Brave Space Alliance right here in Chicago. She's also one of the organizers of the biggest Midwest March, TGNC March for Trans Liberation. Lasai, I hope I got that right. She's I mentioned the first trans woman in Illinois history to be honored during Women's History Month by the state for the work that she's doing. Lasai graduated in 2010 with a BBA in Business Management. As coming out as trans, she has more than 10 years in organizing and advocacy work with Black, Indigenous, trans, and gender non-conforming folks around the world. As I mentioned, she's the director of Brave Space Alliance, business owner of Mystical Beehive, and also facilitates trainings across the US. And for those of you who read the Chicago Tribune, there was a wonderful feature about Lasai and the work of Brave Space Alliance just this past weekend. So if you haven't, be sure to check it out. And I gotta get to Jeff. Sorry, Jeff, I jumped over Jeff's bio. Here you are, Jeff. Okay, Jeff Blythe is the Associate Vice President of UCAN Counseling and Youth Development Services. Jeff has been at UCAN since 2014 and has worked in family-based social service leadership for over 20 years in Illinois and Indiana. He has his Bachelor's of Science in Social Work from the University of Kentucky and his Master's in Science in Social Work from the University of Louisville. Jeff possesses a certificate in nonprofit management from the Executive Leadership Institute and is a graduate of the Walt Disney Leadership Excellence Program. Jeff has training experience in trauma-informed care and leadership development. He is a licensed Illinois clinical social worker, and Jeff is a member of the UCAN Pilot Alliance and Employee Resource Group. And last but not least, I think I've got everybody here, Jane M. Sachs. Jane M. Sachs is the founding president and artistic director of Project Ann, an arts entity focused on cultural production with a social focus. She's an artist, writer, educator, arts advocate, curator, producer, creative advisor, and series producer on many original creative works in various media and art forms. Her work challenges and champions issues of gender, sexuality, human rights, race, and power within the worlds of arts and culture, politics and civil rights, academia, and philanthropy. Project Ann collaborates with partners with artists to create new models of cultural participation and experience with social impact. Jane, as everybody who knows Jane, Jane is everywhere. She is every woman, every person, everywhere. She's on a lot of advisory boards and groups, but and among them, I must mention, she's, as Claude mentioned already, she's on the UCAN DEI advisory board, but she's also is on the Culture Advisory Council for the City of Chicago, a trustee of the Nathan Cummins Foundation, and also a member of an advisory member for the LGBT Pride Action Tank here in Chicago. That means now friend Kim Hunt is also running. So with that, welcome everyone. Be sure to unmute yourselves because now it's time for us to talk. We're going to talk, everyone, again, to all of us who were there. And so again, we're so thankful that you're here. We have some questions we're going to go through and talk about, and then of course we'll pause at about an hour in and give and go to some audience questions, and from there let's get into it. Each year during Pride Month, I see people on social media post the phrase, "The first Pride was a riot." It's even been slapped on some merchandise and monetized by some groups and organizations. I won't name names, but you know who they are. But what's missing in that sentiment is the fact that the people who helped lead that revolt were Black and brown trans folk, legends like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. Despite much progress, here we are today, decades later, still fighting, still struggling, and in many cases, still not fully embracing our trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming family members. And many of us who are both queer and people of color often find ourselves fighting to exist in the skin that we're in and in queer spaces that are dominated by cisgender white men. Still, we persist. So my first question to the panel is, ask one by one, how are you persisting during this Pride Month?
Are we just going in order?
Go right ahead, yeah.
All right, so I guess for me, first and foremost, I am queer and I am Latinx 12 months out of the year. So I'm always prideful of who I am and what I represent, and that doesn't stop, right? So part of what like I have learned, particularly this year, is part of persisting is listening to yourself and your body. Unfortunately for me, this was a year that I really had to like shut down and take a moment for myself to really heal and rejuvenate. because I was burnt out from all of the work that I was done. But prior to that, last year, I actually helped organize the first trans kermés with Tanya Cordova from, oh my God, why am I? Ser el Cambio. Yeah, that's right. Ser el Cambio. And so, you know, as of that experience, or because of that experience, I realized that for me, Pride Month is really a moment to take a seat and really support my trans sisters and my trans siblings and really uplift them.
Next, I'll go to Jamie. How are you persisting?
Did you say Jane or Jamie?
Yeah.
Jamie.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So, I'm the executive director of Lighthouse Foundation. We advance justice for Black LGBTQ plus people across Chicagoland through empowerment, education, and entertainment. And during this Pride season, we are persisting, first of all, through the launch of a mutual aid fund that has now raised more than $11,000. We were turned down by the COVID response fund when we sought funding, but we did what Black queer folk have done since the beginning of time. We were resilient and decided that we do the damn work ourselves. Also, another way that we are persisting in this moment is we are challenging the North Halstead Business Alliance to end their relationship with the white supremacist Chicago Police Department officer Thomas Walsh Sr. You know, Senator Halstead made the wise decision after 6 months of community organizing work on the part of Lighthouse Foundation to finally sever their ties with this white supremacist. And I'm hopeful in this season of tumult that the North Halstead Business Alliance, led by board president Ramesh, will make the same correct decision. You know, Lighthouse Foundation recognizes that this is a time of national upheaval, but when you look at long-term racial justice transformation, like Barack Obama said, it happens on the local level. Changing policing, it happens on the local level. So it is imperative in this moment that we commit to supporting through social media amplification, through financial contributions, to boots on the ground, to supporting local organizations that have pursued racial justice before this tumult. And when all of the protesters have gone on, when all of the posters have been consigned to the dustbins, Lighthouse Foundation will still be here pursuing racial justice because we ain't new to this, we're true to this.
All right. Jeff, you're next.
Hi, everybody. Obviously, I'm like Initza in terms of I live my life proud every day. I'm lucky to be at an agency and an organization that there's nothing that I can't say or do. My life is open. People ask, people know. That means a whole lot. So kind of where you work, what the environment that you're in supports that pride. You know, I guess for me, how I persist through this and looking at this from the angle of, listen, I'm a white male. I see everything what's going on. I know what's happening, and it's hard. But I look at this and say, I am not okay with it. I have to look at what I may have experienced or what I'm offered that other people are not. That doesn't make sense to me. But you know, to me, I am proud of people who use their voice. Gay, lesbian, heterosexual, anybody who uses their voice, I'm proud of. That to me is pride. And what people are doing right now is using their voice collectively and making a change. That's what we all have done over time. We're in a place now where, I'm married, I have a family, this is my life that is no different than anybody else, but how to make those changes for everybody else for that pride.
Thank you. Lasaya, you're up next, and then we'll go to Jane.
What pride? Pride has never been there for me since we started it. BSA has always been on the ground. We participate in the Southside Pride and trying to get that up and going to make sure that Black and brown voices are completely heard, and divest from the Northside Pride. Also divest from Blue Boys Town. I say divest from it, period. It's a simple factor of understanding where white supremacy is. BSA is physically sponsored by Senator Halstead. Senator Halstead would never change their security company unless we put it in our contract with Senator Halstead. So that's why they changed their security company. It's because of the reason of Black trans people stepping into the space, entailing, and them knowing that they needed us just like we needed them to break through the doors, to divest in not only the state white supremacist and nationalist thought process, but also understanding that you can never be able to do what you need to do without Black and brown trans people. We have been doing the work before Pride. We would do the work during Pride. We would do the work after Pride. Trans people have no other choice but to raise themselves in Pride, as the world has demeaned us, as the world has killed us, as the world makes us other, when, bitch, I'm Black before I'm anything. We need to understand and actually invest and also believe in femme and Black women and trans women's leadership during and before this time. I don't need you to invest in me just during Pride. I need you to invest in me after Pride, before Pride, as I sleep, and when I wake up. I need you to invest in me when I say good morning to you. We need to understand what this actually really looks like when we talk about LGBT. There would not be an LGB without the T. There would not be a community without the mothers of the community. And we need to understand what that looks like. And we have not. And I'm here to prove that. I'm here to show that. Before Pride, we started a trans relief program around the Trans Relief Fund. We raised over $50,000 and we sent out $50,000 to trans people during the COVID. We started a food pantry during COVID. We delivered over 4,000 bags to 4,000 people throughout Chicago, no matter gender, race, and whoever they are, because we understand we have to figure out what it looks like to stand together, but also center the voices not only of trans people, but center the voices of Black people during this particular climate where Black people are not only just being killed and through COVID, but also the highest rate of highest rate of death through COVID. Yes, other people are feeling the lash of Rona, as I call her, but we need to understand the death rate of Rona. The death rate of Rona has automatically have killed off a lot of Black people on the South and West Side. So that's where I'm at with Pride. Right now, we need to figure out what it looks like to figure out how to celebrate Pride all throughout the 12 months throughout the year, like trans people have always been doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lasaya. And so, as I love someone said, somebody bring Sophia, go ahead, bring it. Lasaya is bringing the heat as always. Thank you. Jane?
Well, I just want to add to that. I never have thought that Pride was about us saying that we're all the same. I always thought Pride was saying that we're all different and we deserve the same rights. And I think that's what we have to be prideful in the whole year. There is this tug between, if you ignore this Pride Month where you get all this visibility and you could really, leverage it. Are you self-hating when you know that it's diluted? And then if you think that Pride is the climax, then, you're part of the conspiracy. If that's the moment that you're going to really shine, then you're really not working for us. And I think that, Pride for me has always been about insisting the celebration with the revolution. I must say it's always been more revolution than celebration. But this idea that we have to really be strong about that revolution. And this year shows it as much as any. I mean, you know, this week's news already about what's happening in the LGBT community and LGBT community of color, you know, is not prideful, you know, it's shameful. And so, you know, this idea of being prideful in the revolution that we're committed to 12 months out of the year. And I think, you know, there was one pride where it really hit home, which was I had co-produced a film about a Black trans man and his journey. And I received hundreds and hundreds of hate letters. And so what I decided to do for Pride was to individually write to each one of those people in pen, on paper, with a stamp, in an envelope, so that they had to look at me, you know, figuratively, in the face with that kind of venom, you know, and this idea that, you know, can we really stand up and be prideful? Or do we really have to stand up and show people what pride could look like?
Thank you all. And for those of you, I see the chat box is moving, and I hope the Q&A box will be moving soon. So, and that was just the first question, y'all. So we got a few more. So I know that was the first question. Recent events have resulted in numerous organizations, companies, corporations up to now have been silent on racial injustice to express their solidarity with Black and brown people. As if racism all of a sudden happened and they just realized it happened. But as you've already shared, y'all been doing this work for years. As Jamie said, you're not new to this, you're true to this. So tell us, and some of you already answered some of that in the first question, but let's talk. I want to hear about how some of you in your own organizations, what are some of the things, as briefly as you can, some of the things you're working on that, how do you stand up and speak out about the intersection of race, gender, identity, and sexuality? I think, again, as I said, some of you already touched on that, but this is a chance for you to talk about it some more. So I'll go bottom up this time. Jane, we can start with you, and then we'll go, you know, up from there, and I'll bring you all on. So Jane, again, the question is, how do you and your organization stand up and speak out at the intersection of race, gender, identity, and sexuality?
You know, our work is really about creating new models of cultural participation. And that means that we feel like the old models aren't working, and that we have to create new ways that people can, you know, participate with equity and show up. And so obviously what we do is through arts and culture. So one, you know, great example is, I mean, I can't even think of anything that doesn't live in the intersection, because we don't necessarily do the work in kind of, you know, traditional institutions. Part of creating a standalone organization was that we didn't have to answer to that. Not that we're free from every system. If anyone knows how you can do that, you let me know. But the fact that we can actually try things and experiment, and I think that's the thing that is really important in the arts, is that we like workers in the arts and social justice workers, what we do is we create a reality into reality. We create a reality before it exists. And so one example of work is E. Patrick Johnson, who wrote the book Sweet Tea. And it's the first oral history of gay Black men of the South. Now, we started working on developing that book into a full theatrical gesture before Obama was elected. Sodomy and the law had only been overturned about 3 years earlier. You couldn't get into this country if you tested HIV positive or had AIDS. I mean, right? Like, but we didn't even think of this as the really bad times. But here was the very first oral history of this population. And what it showed was the diversity and the dimension and the humanity. And it wasn't about, aren't we all the same? It was about, we're all part of this and we're all different. And so it actually brings in age and geography and gender identity and lifestyle and family and faith, and relationship to kind of world events. And so it's a great example of how you bring all those things together through the work, but then it's never fulfilled until people participate. And so that's the other thing about art, is that the intersection always includes public and public participation. It's a demand, it's a necessity.
Lasaya?
I think we're showing it, right?
Yeah.
We're sending the voices of Black people. We're sending the voices of brown people. And we're also bringing that radical thought and process of, yo, look at your privilege and how can you maneuver your privilege around to assist in being comrades, not allies. We don't need allies right now. I don't want an ally. I need a comrade. And understanding that, like we spoke about Saturday, I need you to flatten that tire so I can get away. If I'm fighting someone for my life, what does it look to actually step up and show what it looks like to be that comrade? A lot of the work that we do is training. A lot of the work that we also do is actually teaching companies to hire trans or non-binary people to be able to not only keep the job, but level themselves up in the job. And a lot of the times that we've seen, a lot of organizations not only just hire trans people, they keep them at a position that they can never level up to. Also, they keep them at a position that do not allow them to grow as people. So when they fire them, their usefulness is over in that organization, and they have nowhere else to go but to find a job that is connected to the work that they was already doing, when there's already not few in between organizations already doing that particular type of work. So now we have to worry about this trans person going back to sex work, which is work, right? But also sex work that can be dangerous to that trans person. Sex work that can be not only dangerous, but also they can catch anything during that particular type of work. So not only you hire this trans person, you fire this trans person, you use them up, they're back in community, they don't trust community because they trusted you to work with community. Now they're in a position like, fuck, now what am I supposed to do? So BSA's mission is to change that aspect, not only within a nonprofit, but also with the city and the state. We continue to push for city funding, even though city funding has completely denied us on many different levels, saying due to the fact the lack of us giving you funding because we don't trust you as a trans organization, but also we don't trust you as a Black trans woman, a Latina woman. If that's all you got to give, then therefore you don't get money from us. I got the receipts to show that. So the understanding that we continue to not only push a particular type of narrative, we also push the radical thought of, yo, I am not a child, I'm a grown woman, and I don't need you to protect me because I can protect myself, but respect me as an adult that I am, that has the master's degree that I do have now, and also the language to be able to do this particular work because we've proven it. Where are the other organizations during this time when they're supposed to be doing this work, but they have not proven it during this particular time? So we continue to change that narrative. We continue to show that we are on the ground. We continue to prove them wrong. And I think that is the continuous aspect of us doing this particular work, because we center this work in our lives, not only the work that we do, but in our lives.
Absolutely, thank you. And Jeff, you are up next.
All right, obviously what we're doing today is part of what we do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Having these conversations, the timing of this obviously is relevant, but part of this was planned in advance. So we plan and we think about things that we want to talk about and things that we need to talk about. The goal of everything we try to do is having difficult conversations, uncomfortable conversations, but the goal is to make them comfortable so that we can talk about them, we can learn from them, we can grow from them. So I feel like, part of this is I've always been part of conversations, and I feel like that's something that we can do that sometimes is hard. I appreciate everything, and I definitely, Lasaya, I know that I have been thinking about, since we talked on Friday, and changing the word from ally to comrade and what that means. That has stuck with me from Friday, whenever I met you. And that is so powerful. So it's trying to say, how do we move personally, organizationally, to being that, and having that be part of our legacy.
Appreciate that. I'm going to add my own commentary before I give it to Jamie. Yeah, that resonates with me, the ally/comrade. The question is, because I know there's a select group of friends, there's less than 10, that I will, put on the black cat suit and get the tire iron and start some shit. But that's a very select group of people, and so when it comes, it challenges me also to think about, okay, in my work, when we use the word ally, okay, how do we shift from that to being a comrade? Because ride or die, that's comradeship. Got it. So, Jamie, yes, you're up next. Sorry. I know some of you answered that question already in the first question, but go right ahead, Jamie.
Sure. I want to thank you, Roderick, for invoking the name of Marsha P. Johnson when this conversation opened. Because when Lighthouse Foundation describes our work, we describe it this way. The heirs of Marsha P. Johnson have come to challenge her beneficiaries. And what we mean by that is, we are now 51 years after the uprising in Stonewall. And when you look at the queer community across this nation, principally white gay men have benefited from the LGBT rights movement. When you look across Boys Town at those who are owning businesses, those who are leading non-for-profits, there is a disparately high amount of those folks who are white, who are gay, and who are male. So we are Marsha P. Johnson's we should be Marsha P. Johnson's beneficiaries because we are certainly her heirs. Every Black queer person is an heir to her legacy and to her work. I mean, she was the first person that started a shelter for trans folk to empower them. And I'm so honored to be a part of this conversation with LaSaya Wade because she has richly been continuing the trajectory of that work. And I think it's important that Lighthouse Foundation speak in this moment because I remember what Zora Neale Hurston says, if you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say that you liked it. Some of the things that we are doing in this moment. First of all, we are promoting a hashtag stay at home and campaign. Our mayor has done a great job of telling folks to stay home, but many Black queer folks are wondering, well, what do we do while we stay home? And so our social media campaign has suggested Black queer books, Black queer movies, Black queer virtual events that our community can attend so that we can still experience community in this moment. Another thing that we have really been pushing is to address the police department. Chicago spends $1.7 billion a year on policing, and 40% of that is our general budget, which is to say that 40% of our taxpayer dollars goes to policing. Imagine if we took $300, $400, $500 million of that budget and devoted it to mental health services, devoted it to access to healthcare, devoted it to employment opportunities, devoted it to ensuring that we don't have so many food deserts. Mayor Lori Lightfoot has done a good job of calling out individual police officers, but what we need is more than Black bourgeois respectability politics. We need more than signifying. We need systematic and systemic change. We see the mayor of LA pushing this by defunding the police department by $100 to $150 million. We need that here in Chicago. But we not only need to reduce the funding of the Chicago Police Department, we also need to get the Chicago Police Department out of the Chicago public school system. We have the teachers union, CTU, demanding that the police officers are removed from our school system. Why is that not happening? They're doing it in Minneapolis. Why aren't they doing it here? I don't know about you, but I don't think a classroom should be a prison pipeline. That's something that we have got to address. Another thing that we've got to do, we've got to pass CPAC, the Civilian Police Accountability Council. We need civilian oversight of the Chicago Police Department. That's the only way that we can ensure that we start to have real justice regarding the police in our nation. Other things that the foundation has been doing in this moment, we've been sponsoring white ally training. There's some white folks who are just coming alive to the reality of racism. We recognize that our white accomplices are along a long continuum of comfort or insight about racial justice work. So we are still in the trenches educating folks in this moment, but not educating them just so that they can read a book about Ta-Nehisi Coates, but we are educating them so that they can turn that insight into on-the-ground mobilization and also digital organizing.
Jamie,
We are
before you...
that we've been waiting for.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because he's about to get past the plate in a second for collection, but no, I said it in love. So hold on, and Yanitza, you've got the last word on this question.
All right. So
Can I have a combat after you speak?
Absolutely.
So for me, I think it's really, really important to acknowledge that I am white passing. I am hetero passing. And I identify as they, but you know, I look feminine, right? I like girly things. But I use that all the time, and because of that passing privilege that I often find myself having access to different rooms and different tables that you know, my trans siblings, my Black siblings don't have access to. And so I always find it my job to challenge the spaces that I'm in to make sure that they include those voices. So for example, last year when I was still at UCAN, we had like a leadership panel, and there was no color, there were no trans folks, and I'm like, where are these people, right? And we did that work, and UCAN made it happen. And so I can go on and on, right? But it's always making sure that those voices come there, that if I have access to them, then I bring my siblings as well, because keeping the power is never going to do anything. So me personally, that's what I do. As far as my work with Tahi, we do a lot with youth work and building bridges. So we're trying to really find ways that we can put our comradeship to use, right? Like to make sure that we are doing the work. And for the youth right now, it means highlighting their voices, highlighting their stories, right? And what it means to be themselves. And we don't sift out the parts of their identity, right? Like, it's not like, oh, right here, you're Latina or you're Latinx or whatever. And right here, you're gay or you're whatever. It's all intertwined. It's intersectional, right? In their stories. And so those stories are often highlighted in the work that we do.
Thank you. And thank all of you. And Lasaya, I know you wanted to respond to something that Jamie said. Go right ahead, please.
Jamie, thank you for bringing Marsha P. Johnson into it. Thank you for bringing the mayor. And also thank you for bringing CPAC. But Marsha P. Johnson was radical in her time. Also, we need to bring in the nuance that Marsha P. Johnson did not want trans women taking hormones either. We also bring in the conversation of Marsha P. Johnson had thrived on whiteness in that particular time to survive, and the different generational gap that is there and that is now. So Marsha P. Johnson had amazing analysis during that particular time, but also she had the survival of whiteness around her to push her through. And the level of content on that notion, we have to realize, fuck the police. We have to realize, fuck this mayor too, because she's shown her anti-Blackness ass on so many levels of saying that she will not defund the police, and also saying that she herself is an op. And we have to bring them conversations in this place around so many issues. She only came to the South Side because she wanted the Black people to vote. She only came to the South Side because she wanted to make sure, oh, I'm going to give you $1,000 here, but I'm really not going to give you what you need to thrive. But also, she's on the side of the police. I don't know anyone on here that has really have in-depth conversations with police family. Police people are fascists, they're violent, and they're also indulge in white supremacy on so many levels. And in order to change that, we have no other choice but to dismantle the police system and rebuild. And yes, CPAC we need, but also we need to rebuild the police system, period. In order to do that, we have to fire everyone. In order to do that, we have to change the complete aspect of how they're trained, because they're going to completely use that every time they go out on the street. So I just wanted to really bring this into the conversation of what this actually really looks like. Yes, but also no. And also we need to really critically think around this a little bit deeper around reforming, but dismantling. We don't need to reform, we need to dismantle.
And I will say that, pause here on this one. We know we could take this policing conversation, and that's a whole nother webinar. That's even a webinar, that's a forum, and I think we should, but it needs to be, so I wanna thank you all for saying it. Thank you for saying it and calling it out here, because we gotta discuss it everywhere we go. So let me be clear, very clear, but I know I wanna also keep us on track to sort of the things that we know that y'all are doing in the space, which includes this as well. But know that we know there will be a time that that time is now, but we're definitely going to have to really have some, as LaSaya said, we're going to have to really unpack this and go dig deeper into this, and we will. But I want to keep this conversation going. One thing that I think just about everyone has mentioned before was North Halstead, Boys Town, spaces up there. Let's talk about. Let's go a little further on that one. Again, I want to definitely. Well, I want to give an opportunity to say, what can we do to let's expound on what we're doing already, and what we can do to make sure that that it's not just about North Halstead. It's not just about, marching in some parade or the businesses there. How are you thinking beyond North Halstead? I think that already, again, LaSaya's mentioned what she's doing around the city, and James, you mentioned what you're doing. I want to hear about how we, all of us, can do more than what we see do on North Halstead. As I said to this group on Friday, and I'm going to say it full disclosure in this meeting here, I can probably count on one hand the times you will see me in Boys Town a year. Period. It's just, it ain't, I never felt welcome. It's not my space. So even though, yes, I know I can present as I present, and I can walk in some spaces and all that stuff, but yeah. But I would love to get some thoughts on that. I'm just throwing it out there, opening up, because it's come up twice, and it's come up a couple of times already. What do we do beyond going beyond Boys Town? How do we do that? That's the question. Anyone can jump in.
You said beyond Boys Town?
Yeah, because I think we've already established that there's an issue there, but how do we continue to go beyond Boys Town with the work that we need to do?
We need to realize Boys Town is not our savior.
I agree.
The name that still says Boys Town. I am not welcome in Boys Town. My black ass is not welcome in Boys Town. My trans ass is not welcome in Boys. My womanness is not welcome in Boys Town. We need to realize the deeper conversation around what that is. We need to realize how whiteness is enriched in us. We need to realize how individualism is enriched in us, and how we portray ourselves wanting to be so close to whiteness that we will do anything to change ourselves to be close to it. Not only our language, but our bodies, our minds, and our state of thinking, even getting rid of family that will actually ride or die with you to do what they need to do to protect you, just because we're going to Boys Town. I see so much of our youth saying, oh, the money's in Boys Town. Oh, the people's in Boys Town. But why aren't you ready to create your own? Why aren't you ready to just do your own on the South Side? It's not as nice as we want. Are you so enriched in materialistic items? You don't see your blackness. You don't see yourself. You don't see how proud I am to be around you, how I love you, how I care for you, how I want to be around you, even in a park. So you don't understand any of this, but you're ready to spend your money on them Jordans. You're ready to spend your money on capitalism, where capitalism just thinks about your coin in your pocket, but not loving you for who you actually really are. We need to divest.
All right. Anyone else? Jane, your hand's up. Go ahead, Jane.
Everything you said is absolutely true. And I think what I would like to relate it to is, along with slavery, this country was founded on being assimilationist, right? The closer we can get to the blue bloods, the closer we can get to straight people, the closer we can get to white people to get what they want. I mean, what I was saying before about the idea is not, I'm just like you. The idea is, fuck you, I'm different. but I deserve the same rights. I deserve the same respect. And also, I don't necessarily want what you want. You know, like that might not be the thing I'm aspiring to. It may not be the way I want to shape my family. So what I want to talk a little bit about, which is central to my work, is creating queer space. And queer space is not about an individual life. It is about a freer space. It is about a space of revolt. It is about redefining, taking the things you want from the kind of general world that we share and reinvigorating them or discarding them. But this idea that somehow we all have to be contortionists and that the goal is to make beige, you know, that's not the world I'm fighting for, you know, because when we talk about diversity, it isn't about smoothing things out. When we talk about inclusion, it means it's going to be rougher. It is going to be more complicated, multidimensional. Like we're talking about a complicated revolution. And the idea that somehow there becomes some place or some way of being, and then we're going to be accepted. Like I'm not interested in that. I'm not.
No, I completely agree. And I, like you, Roderick, I think I can literally count the times that I've gone to Boys Town. And one was actually, during, full disclosure, I'm still learning, right? I used to be very problematic. I'm probably still very problematic. And like, I'm still learning how to decolonize my thoughts, right? And work on all of that. But back in the days, it was more, I had gone during a cis hetero bachelorette party, right? And so for me, Boys Town is very much this like LaShire was saying, and like Jane was saying, it's cis white. They are not doing anything for me. That is not for me. Like even as a queer, like female looking, right? Like that place is not for me. And even Andersonville, right, which was supposed to be for lesbians, is now being taken over, and that place is not for me and has never been for me either, right? But then you have spaces like, shout out to the Vogue School, or spaces like right, Youth Empowerment Performance Project, right, where there's spaces for trans youth of color. And so we are fighting to create those spaces. And I just want to uplift those places and really, really thank them for existing, because we are trying to create spaces for us.
Can I just add one thing?
Go ahead, Jane. Then we'll go to Jane. Go ahead.
You know, we got to talk about the magic of queer space, the joy, the passion, the love, the sex, the expression. Like this is what I'm working for. I mean, you know, it's not to be underground and just like, you know, fighting the revolution and blowing up things. The idea is that it's a place to define ourselves and to be the other on our own terms, but to live a full and rich, explosive, and audacious life. That's what I'm fighting for as a queer person. So I don't want to lose the magic, the happiness, the sex, the sensuality. Like I don't want to make it seem like we're all just spending our days, you know, in the bomb shelter, and that we don't envision a world of richness and joy. You know, that is what it's about.
I appreciate that. No, I think I saw the heads nodding too. I think we all agree to that too, and we're going to get to that in a little bit later in the conversation. Jamie, go right ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly, Lighthouse Foundation takes the approach of both and. We are both creating our own spaces throughout the city, and we are participating in the reformation of Boys Town. So I wear two hats as the executive director of Lighthouse Foundation, which is about a year old, and the pastor of Lighthouse Church UCC, which is a Black queer church that is 6 years old. You know, both the church and the foundation, we hold activities on the south side, and we also hold activities on the north side, because we want to create our own spaces. And we recognize that institutions like the Center on Halstead have received millions and millions of dollars in the name of Black queer folk. So someone has to participate in their reformation. Someone has to hold Boys Town businesses accountable because there are so many Black queer folk that live on the North Side. And Boys Town was built on the backs of Black folk. So to tell North Side Black folk that they got to go to the South or to the West Side to enter an LGBT business that treats them respectfully is just foolishness to me. If there's a town right there that is receiving all of this funding, all of this press attention in the name of Black queer people, in the name of Black queer youth, then they must be reformed, they must be challenged, and they must be held accountable.
Okay. If, Jeff, did you want to add? If not, no worries. If you don't, I wanted to just move on. Go ahead.
Obviously, I'm not from Chicago, so I used to travel here. And that idea of Boys Town was a draw. Whenever you don't have those kind of places, you don't have that. Now that I live in Chicago and I've been here for so long, I don't go to Boys Town. It is not, I see now what it has created, what it is, and I don't feel like I belong there either, and I don't think I ever did, but it was just one of those places where you go, you live in a smaller town, or you live somewhere to say, I'm coming to Chicago, I can be, and there's places I can be, and there's these identities. It's just, for me, I'm connected to it in that way, but I'm not connected to it for all the reasons you guys are saying, to say it's not a environment. It's not it's not home. It's not family. It's fake. And how to find those things is what we have to do, and what people are doing. And that's where I'm at, to say, how do I fit in? Because that is not me. That is not what, and I don't, many people I know who still go there, I question why, what they're getting from it, other than this idea of what they think it is.
I appreciate that. Let's talk about the magic of queer spaces, if I can borrow from Jane's statement. Let's talk about the importance of having organizations, activities for us, by us. When I mean us, I'm talking about people, queer people of color, for us, by us, and serving in the communities where we live. So Lasaya, I'm starting with you, then of course I'm gonna go to take it to Jamie, and then to Yanitza. So again, let's talk, I do wanna shift to the magic of who we are. So, and why your work how your work celebrates that. So take it away, Lasaya.
It's so beautiful, and it's erotic, and it's oh my goodness. I have a dark-skinned, chocolate, sexy man that is queer, that goes by they, them, he, and I look at him and was like, this must be what it looks like to be Black and beautiful and queer and all of this in between. Because when I go to Escape, when I go to Jeffrey's Hub on the South Side,
yeah,
I am liberated. I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't have to walk in there and say, excuse me. I am treated like the Black woman that I am in the space. I am treated like the trans queen that I am when I walk down the South Side of Chicago, because they know who I am. It's because I indulge in Blackness. I talk to Black people on the South Side. I like seeing my Black people when I walk outside. I like having conversation with other Black people because it fills me with joy, because I'm not only educated Black person, I'm a hood bitch from the gate. I've been a hood bitch all my life. Before I got my degrees, before whoever I became now, I was always that girl. I was always that person to use my privilege of my body, but also my passability privilege, to have conversations about transness, to have conversations about queerness. And people will be like, what does that actually really looks like? What is it? Taking people to their first gay club and actually really having fun. Straight men and straight women being in the straight club and actually just having fun, indulging in what queer culture actually looks like, and indulging in around other Black people without worrying about whiteness invading the space. Creating Brave Space Alliance to be able to walk in and actually see myself when I walk in the space. And I call it the mirror effect, because if you see yourself in the space, you know the space might have a conversation or two for you, right? This conversation might be liberatory to who you are. This is the reason why I say I only go to Boys Town when I have to do paperwork with Senator Halstead. That's the only time I go up there. And I make sure as fast as hell as I go up there, as fast as I go back down from the south side to where we actually really are. It's the whole point of I breathe a little bit better, and the food tastes way better. The tea it's just everything for me.
Right.
Indulging in and reading Sister Soldier and Malcolm X and all these things. When I look outside, I see them. I want to be with them. I want to be around them, and I want them to learn how to be around me. I want them to learn how to love me just as much as I love them. And in having the one-on-one conversations without an interloper is a best way to have them conversations, without trying to assimilate to a system that does not want me.
All right, Jamie, then Yanitza, and then we're gonna.
So I'll answer this question with the hat of Lighthouse Church UCC pastor on my head. Lighthouse Church is 6 years old. We are a predominantly Black queer church with white accomplices, Latinx accomplices in the house as well. And Lighthouse Church was built on the presupposition that Black queer people are enough, that our stories are sacred, that we have as multiply marginalized people a unique understanding of the cross and a unique capacity to understand Jesus. And one of the things that I love about Lighthouse Church is that you hear Black gospel music, you hear Black prophetic preaching, you see Black queer bodies, you see Black queer couples holding hands with an arm around the shoulder of another person, enjoying worship together as they enjoy their union together. We are enough. And I think the great success of Lighthouse Church has been that we have created a space for Black queer folk not only to love God, but to love ourselves. All
right. Yeah, Nate, I know you do a lot of work, and I know you also took over, as I mentioned, you took over your grandfather's community organization. But I'll give you the floor. This is.
Yeah. So really quick on Club Dahi, it was made in 1958 as a soccer club, which is why it's Club Dahi. And then from that, it became a hometown association, which sent remittances back to Mexico. This really long thing, right? But when I took over it, it was like, okay, our people are hurting here on this side. And our people are really needing resources and needing their voices to be heard on this side. And so we kind of reformed our vision, right? And the work that we were doing to really start building bridges and to really start centering our voices. And like I said, it's not that we pick apart like, okay, in this space you're Latinx, in this space you're queer, you're lesbian, you're gay. It's more so like bring your full self, like Lashaya does, bring your full self to the table. And like she said, those conversations will happen, those stories will come out. And so we have Llevando la Contraria, which is kind of like, it's the saying between, I'm going to speak for Mexican, right? Because that's my culture, that's what I know. But Mexican moms are always like, oh, ¿por qué me tienes que llevar la contraria? Why do you always have to take something and like say the very opposite of what I'm saying or what I'm telling you to do, right? And so naming it this is like very intentionally saying like, okay, we are going to use our counter narratives to tell you what our experiences are like. And so it's really important to have those spaces by us because somebody who doesn't have that experience is not going to facilitate the conversation in the same way, right? Is not going to pull out those stories in the same way. And so it's, yeah. And then everything else, everybody else already said.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to continue with Yanita and Jeff. You work specifically in the wellness space. It's one of the many areas that you work in. How do you use your training and experience? You're both social workers. Did I get that? Is that correct? Right. You, how do you use your training and experience to support folks who identify as LGBTQ+, especially those who are navigating life as people of color? Can you tell us about how you are, when it comes to that wellness and wholeness, how are you working in that space?
Yanitza, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'll let you go first, Jeff.
Okay. Okay. Obviously, the thing for me is being able to give voice to everyone. So giving opportunities for music, expressive arts, a way that they can, and anybody can express what they need, and that we need to meet their needs. We currently have what we call Quest that we provide, which is a support group it's community-based, it's school-based, it's our continuum-based. Our referrals come from everywhere, and we're constantly expanding that to say, how can we better meet the needs and better meet hear the voices of the youth and the clients that we serve. I think one of the challenges is we're in we have started some of those services in some schools. Not all of them are bringing them forward. We offer trainings, we offer supports, we offer, how can we educate, how can we train, and it's hard to get into schools to provide those things. How does everybody get treated the same way? I mean, part of what we try to train people on is a universal precautions approach. If you treat people in universal precautions like we do with everything else, so if you have a physical injury, we're trained in how to respond to that. You wear gloves, you wear, if somebody is not psychologically in need, those aren't the same thing. So we're trying to look at this from an angle of universal precautions for everybody. Just assume. So we're looking at safety. What is physical? What's psychological? Safety and comfort are not the same thing. So just making somebody comfortable does not mean that makes them safe. The same thing about being trustworthy and honest. So everything we do is it's there. It's not hidden. It's being able to say those things out loud. It's like we're doing with the Quest program. It's peer support. How do you get peers to be there for each other? You're building a community. We're not there to solve it. We're not there to answer it. It's building a community for those things to happen. I think we also have to level the power differences. So part of this is empowering other people to, the youth and the clients to take ownership and to see what they need and how they can support each other versus anything else. I also think, again, I use the word voice. Everything we do is, how do we encourage, how do we support, how do we listen to voices? How do we listen to what people are asking, what they're needing? It's not what we produce or what we do. It's what they need to be done, what they need us for, and how can we have an advocacy and a voice to address needs within schools, needs within the community, and how can we be there for those things?
Thank you. Anita?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I think of is I bring my identity to the space, right? So I do, my paid job is as a therapist. And so I bring my full self to the table in the sense that when I have a queer or a trans client, they don't have to explain their experiences to me. They don't have to take the time to tell me, okay, but my thoughts are valid because this microaggression is real. right? I know that already. They don't have to explain that to me. And so it takes there's less valuable time that's used on explaining things to me, and we can have more nuanced and more in-depth conversations about what they're experiencing, right? And how they're seeing the world. And the thing is that I'm also like an activist, or I am in those spaces. And so I also bring that, because it's not just about individuals understanding their own, understanding and navigating their own spaces, but also realizing, no, honey, you're not going crazy. You're not like these, it's not just you, right? These systems are in place so that you can think, you know, like they're gaslighting you. And they're set up in a very specific way so that you can think that it is all in your head and that it is only you, and that it's like that you're going crazy. Sorry, I know that's not the right word to use, and I'm trying to be PC all at the same time.
Just be you, be you.
So I think for me, that's the most important piece, right? Is understanding those spaces and really being there with them.
Thank you both. And I'm a firm believer in getting the help, the support that you need, and therapy weekly is my thing. So just one of those things, and we'll go there later. That's another conversation too. I want to talk about arts and culture. We've talked about a little bit about that, and I'm going to give this one to Jane. But I know personally, me as a person who in school, for those who don't know, studied music initially, then went into journalism. But as far as arts and culture, is more than just for entertainment purposes only. It's also a space where we can bring out, as you said a moment ago, you need to bring your whole self to the space. So Jane, you lead an arts and culture organization. So tell us about talk about how you leverage that arts, culture, performance to give voice to LGBTQ people of color. You mentioned it already, and I should say, you mentioned Sweet Tea, Black Gay Men of the South, a book that I happen to be in, which is another conversation. But can you tell a little bit more about that, and the work, not so much Sweet Tea, but the work that you're doing in this space, and if anyone wants to weigh in about the importance of how they see arts and culture and expression in their spaces too, and how important it is, feel free. But I want to start with Jane with this one.
Thank you, Roderick, and you are a man of sweet tea for sure, in many ways. And I'm going to talk a little bit about philosophy that kind of guides my work, but I also just kind of want to link it to the conversation before, which, as queer people and queer people in the arts and culture, like we're part of many tribes, and we're the ones we come from and the ones we make, and also the ones that we're fighting for. And so there's already this negotiation and work that has to happen, and how actually the queer community represents everybody. Like there isn't a community that is as inclusive. Every population has queer people in it. And I think in terms of arts and culture, that it has a great and distinct link. I mean, there is a great link between art and justice, and what they share is human dignity. That's what they have in common. There is no justice without human dignity, and there is no art without human dignity. And you can look at the painting behind Roderick of Nina Simone and the way that it depicts her. So it doesn't have to be a huge public engagement. It can be a poem, it can be a painting. But this idea that there's never been a revolution without art at the center, and that it is one of the tools of social evolution and human evolution. Also, part of what is at the center of our work is the idea that democracy promises one thing and one thing only, and all it promises is equitable participation. Now, we do not have that, clearly, but art has a unique ability to actually deliver on that promise, because we can come as who we are to every kind of cultural and art experience. So it is the kind of opportunity that creates a kind of equitable invitation. You bring whatever you are, whoever you are, the experiences you have. And so it is kind of a place that can actually deliver on that kind of participation. What I was saying before is that as artists, we're engaged in creating the reality before it's reality. That is also a distinct connection between creating justice, right, and really changing the world. And again, you know, the idea of creating queer space and defining things on our own terms, like that's also a major principle of the work that I do. One other thing is the idea of actually shifting the so-called canon, the things that are listed as the most important works in the world that anyone who is so-called educated should know and have read and seen and relate to. So part of my work is actually to shift the canon by adding to it, by adding voices that haven't been there, by seeing people there, and also in relationship to those that are there. One of the great things that happened with Sweet Tea is that it became part of an oral history project at the Smithsonian. So when you go in there, not only are there queer Black men swinging from the chandeliers, but there's the slave history and World War II and, you know, the Great Depression. And so what it does is it creates a much more complicated conversation. It's not so easy to finish the sentence as everyone used to. It breaks down assumptions. It allows us to have different associations and think about ourselves differently. And so the idea with Project Dan is if we create new models that shift the way we feel individually, will we do differently? And if we create models in the world, will it shift conversations? We opened a play in Garfield at the Field House. And then the night of our opening, it was a community collaborative opera. And we opened it in New York, and it's since traveled and will be traveling around the world. And there were 50 youth from across the city who participated in it. We opened it the night of the Laquan verdict. Now, our racist city started closing down the city, right? Because you could either say because Black people were going to go crazy, or you could say because they knew the result was going to be bad, right? And so the assumption was this cop was going to get off, right? And so I kept getting calls saying, are you still going forward with this? You know, are you still going forward? And I was like, if the park district's open, we're open. That night, we performed the opening of the opera in the Field House. And we had, the mayor came and people, head of institutions, and also people from about 25 different communities. And so what it also talks about is the porousness of art and culture. It's not calcified. It's a living, breathing organism that takes on the character of the times and the way we need it to. There were people at that who did not want to talk to the mayor and did not want to have their picture with him and sat on the other side. And then there was also an 8-year-old girl who was like, you know, man, the mayor came to see my opening. I could give a shit who he is. The mayor of Chicago on a Friday night came to see me sing. And so it was a room full of layers of experience. And that's something that art can do that is really an unusual capacity.
Thank you. I'm going to thank you, Jane. Thank you for sharing that. I want to be mindful of time. We're about at 2:15, and we do have several questions that have come in. So I'm going to jump ahead past jump to my final question for the panel. Let's talk about self-care. Everyone should take time to recharge, reboot, replenish, especially folks who work in spaces where you have to often call out systemic racism and oppression inside and outside the LGBTQ plus community. What are your self-care practices? And my friend Christina Steed, yes, I borrowed this from you. What are your self-care practices, and what would you say to others who are working in the spaces similar to ours, who are considering stepping into this space? Anyone is free for all.
I think we're all dealing with how do we do self-care right now in a midst of a fuck storm that's happening. Me is actually just sleeping more. Me is calling my dog while I'm on the camera and be like, you know what? I don't care if y'all looking at me a particular type of way. She's gonna be right here looking at you because I know that you are full of crap and I have to sit here and listen to this crap, and to self-care me from cussing you out and continue to be on this panel, she's gonna be right here, right? Me is listening to Black women sing to me in the morning, Jill Scott, Sade, the sisters, the Perna sisters, Tina Turner. laying with my man, going into the garden, growing vegetables, learning how to grow vegetables, being the witchy bitch that I am, reading, catching up, not reading, but catching up to Sister Soldier's new books. Yeah, it's just learning how I can and what will assist to me in this time. I cannot indulge into self-care like I want to because Corona. That bitch is still outside and I'm waiting for that bitch to go home and she's still running these streets like it ain't no curfew outside. And also, you know, there's a revolution happening out there. How can I make sure my people are fed and watered all types of night, making sure my staff is protected, making sure they get to sleep and to continue to be able to do what they do. So right now for me is really them things, but also I have a baby on the way. So that is my attention to be able to receive a type of love that only a few and many queer people are able to receive from children, that their legacy is there. And I'm excited to be able to get that.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you shared that. Congratulations. For those who didn't read the She Be an article, it was in there, but again, others, and I'm gonna ask you to do it in 30 seconds or less because I want to get to the audience questions. Self-care, self-care.
Okay, 30 seconds. I agree. You go towards the love. And for us, it's often dancing naked to Prince. Anyone is welcome to join. I also feel like I rejuvenate too by helping other people in simple ways. So there's the big fight, and then there's the who needs something, and that feeling that if I'm not well and they're not well, none of us are well. So it doesn't always mean that it's a big, huge kind of activist gesture as much as it's just a kind of generosity. And that rejuvenates me too.
Okay.
I'll go. So for me, it's really listening to your body, right? Like really, really listening to your body. I shut down for a couple of months because my body was like, we did too much last year, calm the fuck down. And so I took the space to do that, right? I have 3 children, and I have a partner who are absolutely amazing during this Rona stuff. I have really, really used the time to love on them and really like enjoy them in ways that I hadn't because I was so busy with all of these activities and spaces and marches and all of these other things that I didn't focus on them. And so I really, really took the time to love on them, and that was self-healing. I also sleep. I also play Crash Bandicoot. PS4 has been my savior. So it's whatever your body says that it needs, listen to it.
And we'll jump in before I get these audience questions. And you have.
I'll say, obviously, how I do self-care. I have one thing. I've been making sourdough bread. I've learned how to nurture and build sourdough bread, which I've never done before. But the biggest thing I do right now is I think like Initza and Lasaya and Jane, I listen to my body. I listen to the environment. I need to role model what I tell other people to be doing. Take time, take care of yourself, take a break. You know, I find myself every day, I need to laugh at something every day. If I have to find it, I'm gonna find it. But I have to have that moment where I can kind of just let it go.
Got it. Jamie, final one, and then we're going to jump into the audience questions.
Yes, just really quickly, I would say, first of all, I fall into the arms of Christ in worship. That has been something that has been pivotal for me in this moment as a person of faith. And secondly, my partner now of 2 years, he cooks. That's why I'm gonna have to get a waist trainer in a little bit. But eating his food, going out on walks with him, being in conversation with him, that's healing for me.
All right. One audience, I'm going to go to some questions. So thank you everybody for our attendees for your patience. I'm going to jump to a few questions and I'm going to ask our wonderful panelists to just keep your answers short and sweet. I know that's going to be hard, but let's try. One came in, as a parent to a Black trans child in middle school, how can we, adults, create safe spaces for LGBTQ plus kids of color to experience community, joy, and mentoring and develop leadership skills in this community will need in the future? That's a long question, I know. I'll go back to the first half. As a parent to a Black trans child in middle school, how can we adults create safe spaces for LGBTQ plus kids of color to experience community, joy, and mentoring? I'll just leave it out there. Please jump in briefly and we'll go to the next one. Anyone can jump in who wants to jump in on that.
I think that's a hard question.
It's definitely a hard one.
It's a hard question because as a person that transitioned at a young age, there was no places for me. And there was no places for me to go, but there was no places for me to see myself as a youth or play with other youth trans people. Like they said BYC, Yelp, all these particular places where the youth congregate at, but also love them. Let them do what they want to do. Allow them to be human, allow them to be a whole human. If they want to go out and play go out and roller skate, let them go out and roller skate. If they want to go play with the kids down the street, let them go play with they might hit scuffles, they might do, but that's children. Children learn. What I'm learning now is what I already knew, but also what I'm learning now is children don't really give a damn what, who, and what you're doing. They are taught that from their parents. So you need to have a conversation with their parents around their messed up ways and their messed up trainings. But let them breathe. Let them do what they do. That's the best way I can say is because if I was allowed to breathe, if I was allowed to do what I needed to do for myself, because children they are, but we also need to give them the autonomy of their own bodies and who they are, will teach you everything that you need to know.
Okay, thank you, Lasaya. Anyone else want to add into that before I jump to the next one, knowing that it is 2:23? I'm just monitoring the time.
Just really quick, as a mom, I think it's really, really important, like Lasaya said, love them, right? Accept them. If they're transitioning, acknowledge their pronouns. If they want to dress like the opposite gender, let them. If, and be with them and support them and do your homework. Google places that you can take them. Google spaces that have been created. And if they haven't, talk to other people and see how we can create those spaces.
Thank you. And I know there's a couple of people who've mentioned being some PFLAG folks that have chimed in. We appreciate that. And thank you too, that there are sources out there. Let's ask a question. I'm going to combine a couple of questions that have come from folks who basically want to ask, what's the best thing that a white person can do to help support the community, people of color? So I guess I'll ask it this way. For those who want to be white, say it again. Say it again, Lasaya.
Open your purses. Allow your whiteness to thrive into coinage within the community organizing, which give money to the protesters, give people, the organizations that are giving stuff to protesters money. Coin. Shut up and give coin. Just give the coin. Just allow us to do what the fuck we've been doing to allow you to be able to live your best life. Coin, coinage, money.
Run your money. Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? Anyone else want to weigh in? Again, moving from allyship to comradeship for those who are non-people of color.
And poor people, be a comrade. Fuck it up, burn it all down with us.
Yeah, I think, along with that, I think you got to give, whatever you got. You don't have money, then you give other things that are resources, and you let people lead. I think also, we have to really, this is a clarifying moment. And if this is not a clarifying moment for white people, I don't know what it's going to take, but we really have to think about, what are we willing to burn up in ourselves, and what are we willing to set fire to in our world as people who are not of color, right? Like not this idea, like what are we really willing to give up in ourselves? What are we really willing to discard and let go of? And so, it may be money, right? It may be money you're going to spend on something else. Like I always go left. So it should be going to those organizations, but this is a moment where it's about an internal and external, and who you are right now is who you are. So really, pay attention to what you're doing and how you're doing it. People always say that budgets are really revealing, and it's true. What do you spend your resources on? What do you spend your time on? What are you doing to actually dig deep? It's a messy time. It's uncomfortable. We got history, we got present, but there's an opportunity for the future. And without white people and major transition, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It hasn't stayed this way because of Black people.
Right. I will add, so the last question I want to ask before I turn it back over to the folks at UCAN, there's been a couple of questions about youth. How can we bring more youth into conversations like this? And I think it should be, we don't need to have them here. We need to have them in their own conversations that are just period. But that's just me. I'm the moderator. Let's ask the panel. Yeah, Anita, your hand is in the air. Making spaces for youth. How can we be better at that? Go for it.
Definitely we need to do the work, right? And I'm not going to give the answer. What? Oh, of how to do that, right? But I did want to plug Dahi. We are in the works of trying to do something like this with 2 different age groups. One of them being ages 6 to 9. And then another one being adolescents, right? And one of the one with the children from 6 to 9 actually came because of my daughter, my 6-year-old. We were talking about everything that was going on, and she was just kind of like processing her thoughts. And so anyway, long story short, we're having those 2 things. So please be on the lookout. Club Dahi, we're on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. And please feel free to DM us if you want to participate.
I want to bring Asada's daughters into space too. Asada's daughters have been doing a lot of work on the South and West Side with youth, especially Black and Brown youth, sending divorce of Black youth. The youth can go out there and fuck up the streets just like anyone else. I think it's important to understand that they need to be in these conversations and actually learning these type of conversations. Yeah. Without my mother and without my grandmother, I would not be in the position that I'm in right now, because they allowed me to sit and have conversations and not only did not protect me from the world, but also understand the world of what I'm going to be facing. It's to understand, like, a lot of the movements that we have done and within our 400 years of fighting this system, the youth have been on the ground too. And also the youth has also pushed a lot of legislation through as well. So we cannot discount what their power is, and also their intelligence. We can't discount that.
Because they're the ones fucking shit up right now. It's not us.
Okay, we've got 1 minute left. I've got to take control. I'm taking the microphone. I love you all. Thank you, our panelists. You've been wonderful. I'm sorry we didn't get to every question. I'm going to talk to UCAN folks and see if we can get the questions that we didn't get to our panel. As we talked about Marsha P. Johnson, but I'm going to end with her. Something she said: no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Angelucci, EVP of Planning and Administration at UCAN, to close us out. Thank you all so much. Thank you, our panelists. Thank you. Laura? Hopefully Laura is there. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Hi. Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for just a really thoughtful, interesting couple hours here. I think I appreciate all the challenges that have come our way, and the challenges around Boys Town, talking about privilege, male white privilege, and really their lack of interest in changing, challenging all of us just to be better on an individual as well as a community level. and that really challenging us to create comfortable spaces for queer people and for queer youth. I think that, for me, my work has always been with youth, and to kind of close this out by saying that, we at UCAN really believe that our youth have a voice, and we've provided them that voice over the years, and will continue to do so. But we're on this journey with everyone else, and it's just really been an exciting time here at UCAN, and I appreciate all the diversity in thought during this conversation. These are important conversations. We need to help people have them so that we can continue to propel the work forward. So I want to just thank everybody for being here. It's been a really interesting, fascinating few hours.
Thank you. Yeah, for all the work that you do, and thank you all panelists.
Thank you, UCAN. Thank you, panel. Thank you, our attendees. And the video will be available soon. So stay tuned to follow UCAN and follow our panel too on the socials and on the web. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.